Join me as I recount a divine encounter connected to Roe v. Wade's overturning.
I saw the eyes of Jesus like an endless ocean of fire. I saw the glory behind him that emits from him like a liquid glory honey cloud. But one of the parts of that story that I rarely get to because I get so caught up in the glory of God and those eyes of fire that even when I close my eyes and I remember what it was like to see Jesus in his eyes of fire, it was an endless ocean of fire. But I forget to tell the part that I actually woke up at one point in the midst of this encounter. I woke up in a car when they were transporting me. They weren't taking me to my cousin's house. They were taking me somewhere else apparently. And I woke up and my head was on my cousin's lap. And I woke up for a moment just to look up and see. And then I put my head back down on his lap and I could hear his heartbeat. But suddenly my cousin, his heartbeat was the heartbeat of Jesus. And it was so melty that his heartbeat melted me back into the realm that I had just been in. And I will never forget that heartbeat. I'll never forget what it did on the inside of my spirit. There was so much. It was like the key to even being in that heavenly realm was the heartbeat of Jesus, the love of Christ. So when I came across St. Gertrude and she had revelation on the Sacred Heart and she had had this same encounter, when you've had a profound encounter, and no one's going to understand this, but then somebody else comes along and shares in a way that you realize they understand, they went through the same thing you did. It's always very encouraging. And so I got a taste of the Sacred Heart, what's now known as the Sacred Heart of Jesus in some circles. I got a taste of that many, many years before I ever knew what the Sacred Heart of Jesus was. But I'll tell you a very powerful testimony of what has happened since I began liturgizing the writings from the Herald of Divine Love and St. Gertrude the Great. Many years ago, the Lord had me really praying for the ending of abortion in America. And so what happened was, as I was liturgizing Herald of Divine Love, I was also in charge at the time with a few others of putting on a men's retreat. About 60 men go up to this mountain every year in August. And we were in charge of sort of laying it out and doing the teachings. And so the Lord had impressed upon our hearts to utilize this book, the Herald of Divine Love, and to this other book, Love, Peace, Joy, Devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and to focus on the Sacred Heart of Jesus. What is the heartbeat of Jesus? And as we were preparing, actually what happened was that year, as we were preparing and reading and doing small groups and chewing up everything we could get about the Sacred Heart of Jesus, guess what happened on the feast of the Sacred Heart of Jesus? Roe v. Wade was overturned. Oh my goodness, somebody hear that. I'm not trying to be like some preacher guy we've all made fun of before, but my goodness, St. Gertrude pops into my living room, asks me to liturgize a book of hers. In the process, I end up utilizing that book with some others at a men's retreat. And the year that we make her writings, the Sacred Heart of Jesus, our focus, abortion, Roe v. Wade was overturned on the day of the feast of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. I'm going to say that one more time. St. Gertrude pops into my living room. God confirms it through my wife, who comes down and says, whoa, she has the anointing like your old pastor. I start liturgizing the book she told me to liturgize. We start using her book in a men's retreat, and that year that we started using her book and focusing on the Sacred Heart of Jesus, there was a feast day called the Feast of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and it was announced on that day that Roe v. Wade was overturned. I've talked about many times how the days of the week that we abide by here in America, they're actually named after false gods. Monday, the moon god. Saturday is Saturn, the god Saturn, the false god Saturn. Wednesday, Odin's Day. Thursday, Thor's Day. A lot of people don't understand this because we've been born into this Truman world where we've been being programmed from so many different angles. But I've often said, in God's history book, I don't know that it's written that an event happened on Monday or Tuesday. In God's history book, Roe v. Wade might not have been on June 24th, overturned on June 24th. In his world, Roe v. Wade was overturned on the feast of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Relationships Build relationships with those who are walking in deeper waters than you are. Ask God for the cloud of witnesses to begin to mentor you. Ask God to bring mentors into your life. Go deeper with Jesus. Make room for him. Make room for mentors. This whole life, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. This whole life is about relationships. We'll see you speaking of relationships, we'll see you all again on Prayer Monday. Hope you all have a great weekend.
You're the one the angels cry out to. You're the one the elders cast their crowns before. You're the one the angels cry